Welcome to the show Goldsquadrongays. It's the podcast where two Star Wars loving gays talk about and review their favorite Star Wars content while also being gay as hell. I'm your host, Bradley Brower.
I'm your other host, Charles Rogers, and welcome to the show where the hosts don't know how to shut the fuck up before the show starts, and it takes us 45 minutes from when we started this Zoom call to actually get to recording the episode, because we needed to have a very long conversation about the Rings of Power Season 2.
Here's the thing, I'm only watching like so many new shows right now, or like so many shows, so because that's like one of the shows, I feel like I don't have anything else to talk about. Like, I'm like, oh, well, Rings of Power, and then tag it all along. Like, I only know those two things right now in my brain, like, and I don't know what else to talk about.
Well, I should be getting back into, because I've been on my Star Trek journey, as we know, along with Holodeck Divas. Shout out to Holodeck Divas for turning me into a Trekkie. I am officially a Trekkie now. And here's how I know, Bradley, that I'm officially a Trekkie. I have very strong opinions about Star Trek V.
Oh, God, okay.
I have very strong opinions about this movie. But now that I'm done trying to blast my way through the original series and the animated series and the movies, I'm breathing, I'm taking a step back, because we also don't have any Star Wars TV on right now that I have to bother with.
Such a shame.
So I was halfway through Elite Season 4. I had to stop and marathon my way through Star Trek. Now I should be going back to it. So I'm still slowly but surely on my Elite journey.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm on a Ryan Murphy journey right now because when I tell you this motherfucker dropped 5 shows at one time.
Of course he did. Of course he fucking did. This is what he does. That man gets fucking everything for no reason.
I am shook how many shows came out at the same time, because I watched 911, so that's a immediate.
Really? Oh yeah, I forgot you watched 911.
I love 911. It's so campy. It's so great. I fucking love it. 911. I just started his new show, Dr. Odyssey, which is 911 on a cruise ship, and then I did. We started watching Grotesquerie, which is his new kind of horror kind of show. I don't know why it's not just another season of American Horror Story, and it's a whole brand new show, but it's also very confusing, and I don't understand it, and I need to keep watching it to get the show. Like, it's one of those random shows where you're like, I don't understand what's happening. And then also, of course, Monsters on Netflix. I'm still watching that because obviously hot. If you know who I'm talking about, but
yeah, the facial expressions I'm making in the call. I regret that my facial expressions actually are not conveyed through the medium of audio, because I've been sitting here with just like my face scrunched up. It annoys me. It angers me to no end. I don't like Ryan Murphy very much. I don't know him personally as a person. I'm just speaking about him as a producer, but I don't like him very much. And it eternally annoys me that he gets a show on Netflix called Monster that everybody talks about, and there's giant billboards, because I live in Los Angeles,
right,
with the admittedly very attractive actors that they have portraying these characters up on the billboard. So I'm not complaining about that. But these giant billboards with the name Monster, and it has nothing to do with the mid-2000s anime that is one of my favorite pieces of media, which should have gotten an adaptation helmed by Guillermo del fucking Toro, of all people, and HBO passed on it because they're cowards who don't know what they have. Anyway, that is eternally confusing to me. Anyway, what was the 5th show that was Ryan Murphy that you watched? Before I go on an extended tangent about how fuck Ryan Murphy, I don't like anything he does.
I mean, I'm not watching his other show. It's I think it's Aaron Hernandez or whatever. It's
the American Sports Story.
American Sports Story, right? Which is just American Crime Story and American Horror Story, but sports themed, I guess. I don't know. So he's got hella shows, which is fine. I'm only watching 4 of them.
He's like Dick Wolf for gay people.
Oh my God, he really is.
He really is. Ryan Murphy is Dick Wolf for gay people.
And the fact that like his 911 series, so he has 2 of them. He has 911 and 911 Lone Star. They're making a 3rd one now. It's gonna film in March. I don't know what city it's set in, but he's creating his own Chicago verse, his own Law and Order verse. Like, what the fuck? Like, that's insane of him to do. Like, I'm surprised he doesn't have his own Grey's Anatomy. Like, there's no doctor show he has right now because
Didn't
Doctor
he
Odyssey
just?
is whatever, but it's
I
not
was
a
about to say,
doctor
didn't
show.
he just come out with a doctor show?
Well, it's like a soft doctor show because they're doctors on a cruise ship,
Well,
so they're
here's
not
my
like.
thing. I would question how much, because I know he produces these shows. I would question how much he's involved in their development. This is something I would have to look at because historically, part of my beef with Ryan Murphy, and I have lots of beef with Ryan Murphy as a producer. Part of my beef with him is I think he's a hack who can't write more than one season of something. Because everything I've watched of his, it's either a limited show where it has one season, it's one and done, and then it starts to get bad midway through. Or he clearly has enough of a concept for one season of a show. Hello, I'm looking at you, Glee, and then doesn't know how to write something beyond that. Like American Horror Story was not supposed to be an anthology.
Right.
They switched it halfway through the first season. If you look at the original marketing and stuff for American Horror Story, it nowhere says that it was supposed to be an anthology. Like, that was the decision they made because they were like, oh shit, we can't keep continuing with these characters. Let's do aliens instead in an insane asylum. Also, the devil is here. Fuck it. We have James Cromwell. We're going to do whatever we want. But I would be curious how involved he is in some of these new shows, whether he's involved in the concept for the shows or whether or not he's just producing them or what's going on with how he makes these shows.
The only thing I can say to that is that we just watched episode, I think 3 of Grotesquerie last night, and it said directed by Ryan Murphy. So he definitely had a hand at least somewhat in that show. I don't know what that means. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to say because like directed by nowadays, especially with TV, is hard too because, TV directors, there's so many, like everybody, it's not something that you necessarily are like, oh, I'm a director of movies, I'm a director of TV. Like they're definitely different worlds and they're different types of people who can do it.
It's also it's a different skill set too that you need
exactly.
Because kids before the era of streaming, when we had like 1 or 2, maybe 3 directors for an entire season of something, back in the era when things were just on network, you would have different directors who would come in and they would move between shows. So if you were a TV director, you would have to pick up an episode of the show, and it's a different skill set because rather than being able to come in and be like, I am the director of the film, this is my vision, we're going to go for it, you have to work in the established confines of the show. You can't like radically alter the tone of the show. How you are directing the show has to remain consistent with everything. That's something that I think has been lost a bit in the art of streaming. I know these are entirely different skill sets. So I would also be interested, because one thing I will say positive about Ryan Murphy, and it's not a lot, but he does seem committed to continuing to make network television shows. Like, yes, he does make stuff on streaming too. Like, he has his contracts with Netflix and things, but he also works on network shows.
Right.
And I also think that's part of why 911, which admittedly I haven't watched, but a lot of my friends and mutuals have watched 911. And I actually do have a friend who worked on 911.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. But one thing I will say is I think part of the reason that it's taken off so much is it's like an updated kind of network show.
Yeah.
Like everything I hear about it is it's a network TV show.
100%.
It's just, slightly better written and understands that we like to have characters that we follow throughout the entire time. I feel like 911 is a return to that from what I've heard of the show. Admittedly, I need to watch it, but I gotta finish Elite first. I'm determined to do what Bradley couldn't and actually finish this show. But I feel like that's what 911 is.
I think so. I think it's a return to the old style of network television.
And I will give Ryan Murphy that. He does seem committed to that. In addition to making his glitzy nothing burger shows that he's constantly putting out that look very impressive and have no substance whatsoever. Speaking about things that are glitzy with no substance.
There you go. Ooh, that's a good transition.
That's a burn. I did not think Star Wars Inquisitors ended on a high note, but that's okay. We're going to talk about what works and what doesn't. Bradley, we're talking about Star Wars Inquisitors today. Which issue specifically? I almost said which episode. Which 4. Issue specifically are we talking about?
We're talking about issue 4.
I love the struggle.
Yeah, you tricked me for a second because I almost said
issue 4.
Issue 4.
That's okay. We're going back to TV next week.
Yes, issue 4, A Message from the Darkside.
All right, credits are all of the same. Obviously, we're going to be talking about spoilers for episode, fuck me, issue 4. Obviously, we're going to talk about spoilers. If you haven't read this series, it is all available. You can go and read it. It's not quite on Marvel Unlimited, but hey, if you're in the future and you're listening to this past episode, you can probably go read it on Marvel Unlimited. But we're going to talk about issue 4 today, A Message from the Darkside. So after we get an Order 66 flashback showing Tensu Run at a Jedi temple where clone troopers show up and murder all of the other Jedi who were there, we cut to Vader in the present. He is on the Devastator and he is like, okay, Inquisitors, all of you have fucked up to this point. I know I said all of the previous times were the last chance I was giving you. Take backsies. This is actually the last chance that I'm giving you. Go kill Tensu Run. So Tensu Run is sitting on a rock and he's having deep conversations, but we need to quickly move on because we don't have the screen time / page space for any actual character development. We just got to get to the action. So the Inquisitors show up. Pan and Jed, I think, is the other monk's name. Pan and Jed and Tensu are up in the sky. They have a dogfight with the Inquisitors. The Grand Inquisitor kills Pan, and Jed and Tensu land. They land, they retreat to the temple. Vader calls the Grand Inquisitor and is all, you have failed me by not immediately solving this mission. I'm coming there. There's a big fight with a bunch of droids. Eventually, Vader shows up as they're fighting Tensu Run. Jed gets killed by the fifth brother, so now it's just Tensu by himself. There's some philosophical debating, but ultimately Tensu loses. Vader decapitates him, and that's the end of the comic. Yay. I love Bradley's facial expression. Bradley, what did you think overall of issue number 4 of Star Wars Inquisitors?
I thought it was a fail. I did not like it.
Okay.
Now, I say that with the same breath as saying I fucking knew that this was going to happen. Like, the problem with this story is that we know how it ends because we know what happens for the next 30 years plus in this timeline. Like, you know what I mean? Like the issue I have right now with the Skywalker timeline, essentially, which is anywhere from Phantom Menace to Rise of Skywalker, anything that happens in between that time, for the most part, we know what fucking happens. We know how to get from point A to point B, right? We might not know the details because, like you always say, it's a mythology. We don't necessarily know all the details. So that's why they sprinkle in these little stories to be like, oh, look, here's another thing that happened. Here's another thing. My issue with this particular miniseries as a whole, the problem with this issue is that I knew Tensu was going to die at the end of this, right? Because there's nothing that they have done in this story over the past couple issues to lead us to believe that anything else was going to happen. They set up like, oh, he wants to start like a new Jedi Order and blah, 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 and all this temple and stuff. But we've already seen that Luke tried to do that and failed. So why is random Jedi number 7 going to do that and then succeed? And then we never hear about it all the way through Rise of Skywalker. Like, it doesn't, the problem with this, the premise of this story, whereas I think it's fun and I love watching Inquisitors do Inquisitor stuff, I don't like that there was just no reason for him to win. There was no reason for him to get to the end and anything good happen at the end of this other than just, oh yeah, the Inquisitors win at the end. And they get there like weird too.
I think for me, looking back at this particular issue highlights very strongly what I think the central flaw of this Inquisitors miniseries is. And I think is that Tensu Run himself is not a very interesting antagonist for the Inquisitors. Is that they are trying to have these moments. This comic is very much trying to have its cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
Where they're trying to have these moments with the Inquisitors where we spend more time with them and understand them, which are the parts that I like. Issues 1 and 3 I really like because we got new looks at the Grand Inquisitor, Seventh Sister, and Ninth Sister.
Right.
Not so much the Fifth Brother, but the parts of issue 2 that I liked were when the Fifth Brother was talking to the droid. And we were learning a little more about who he is and what he thinks. This issue is primarily focused on Tensu Run as he's making his last stand against the Inquisitors. And I don't think they've set him up as a particularly interesting antagonist for them. They are trying to set him up as this Jedi all the way back in issue 1 who inspired this hope in people, but he's kind of doubting himself and he's going one way or the other, and he kind of swings toward the path of doing what's necessary when he murders those guys, but then he swings back towards being a Jedi. He's very back and forth, and by the end of it, I'd hoped he would have a moment of choice. Like, he's missing a very strong moment of choice in this issue to either let go of this dream that he has, which he kind of does, but it's not very strong, or to, like, fully commit to it and then be taken out by the Inquisitors. Like, if we look at Jedi Fallen Order, sorry to Bradley and everyone who hasn't played Jedi Fallen Order, I'm about to spoil the plot of Jedi Fallen Order. So if you don't want to know what happens at the end of Jedi Fallen Order, skip ahead about 30 seconds. Cal Kestis spends the entire game for Jedi Fallen Order trying to retrieve a holocron with youngling names in it so that he can restart the Jedi Order. That is also his goal. And the whole point of Jedi Fallen Order is at the end of the game, he destroys the holocron and is like, we need to do something else. This was a bad idea. Tensu Run doesn't really have a character arc like that. I think the core concept of this comic, which is all the Inquisitors are going after the same guy, is an interesting enough concept on its own. I just don't think Tensu himself had enough screen time or had enough real understanding of why he does the things he does. This comic feels like it's trying to cram a whole bunch of ideas that the writer has down into 4 issues, and a lot of the meat just isn't there. And truthfully, had they either gone one way or the other, had they made this Tensu Run story and Inquisitors just keep showing up, that could have been one way to do this. Or you could have written this comic in such a way that it's all the Inquisitors and we never have any of the Tensu intercuts away. Everything we learn about him comes through the Inquisitors gradually discovering pieces of him. As it stands, yeah, we're watching a chess match. Not even a chess match, we're watching a checkers game between 2 people and we know who's going to win.
Yeah.
And because I push back on your point a little bit of, we know how this ends and that's the problem. I don't think the problem is we know how this is going to end. I think the problem is the journey isn't interesting to the destination that we already know.
That's a better way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think what they should have done here was instead, don't get me wrong, I get it. It's a mini series. We don't have that many issues to deal with. However, I think they should have invested more issues in this story. It should have been a longer mini series. I don't know how to explain how long 12 issues of a comic run would be, but I think that they should have done one issue centralized focused on an Inquisitor each time and make it a different Inquisitor that gave us insight to that Inquisitor each time. So it would have been more so like where the back plot of the whole entire thing would have been finding Tensu, right? That would have been the whole back plot.
Right. That's the overarching like meta plot of the thing is we're going after Tensu Run.
But they should have done it from the perspective of each Inquisitor as each issue went. And then we're learning new bits of information about Tensu. Yes, like you said, from their perspective, but also more of their backstory or more of why they do the things that they do. Because unfortunately, as much as I love the Inquisitors, I don't love the explanation of things that they do sometimes as, oh, they're just tortured. Like, oh, they're just evil. Like,
they're all really interesting potential characters.
Right.
You would fucking love. I'm telling you this. We have got to get you a setup where you can actually play this. You would fucking love Fallen Order.
Yeah.
Because a whole lot of, I'm not going to say who the villain of Fallen Order is, but I will say you'll figure it out very, very quickly. But the whole purpose of the Second Sister is an exploration of that very idea. Right. She's that kind of character. And yeah, I agree with you. Of the 2 options that I presented, I think for me the more compelling would have been what this comic was clearly pitched as, which is every issue is a different Inquisitor hunting the same guy.
Right.
But we didn't get... The issues I liked the most were the ones that had more focus on the Inquisitor of the issue. And the issues I liked the least were the ones that were trying to be about the plot. Because the plot's not that interesting and doesn't need to be if the characters are, which I didn't feel like this landed in such a way that the characters were particularly interesting.
And I feel like Tensu is really just Cal Kestis, but like just not as interesting. Like he's just
generic Jedi number 7. And again, I said he's not a particularly interesting antagonist, part of that is they tried to give him this distinct character where he's torn between being the symbol of hope but he's actually doubting himself. And we'll talk about that when we get to the scene that he has on the rock. But they're trying to set him up as this, but because the comic wants to have it both ways, we don't get enough time to really explore that. And we also don't see that he changes in a major way from the beginning to the end of this comic. He's basically the same person at the beginning as he is at the end. The one thing he does is at the end of the last issue, parking and waiting for the Inquisitor's master to show up so that he can confront him. That's like the one thing. Other than that, yeah, he's pretty much generic Jedi number 17.
Yeah, I don't like that.
He's not a new character, and he's not a character that gets a lot of depth.
I was going to say, I think what would have made this a more interesting story, and this is just a totally separate plot thread, I think we should have followed Tensu, or just someone like him, or just a person, right? A main character who was being indoctrinated into the Inquisitors, going through the steps, just like with the 13th Sister storyline. Like, I think that that's a more compelling story, like where you get somebody who gets put into the Inquisitors, goes through it, and then at the end is like, fuck, I need to get out, kind of thing. I think they could have done something.
That is exactly like Rise of the Red Blade. You just described Rise of the Red Blade.
I think they could have done something more like that. Like, I wouldn't have done it exactly the same way, because I think there's way more.
You also
more
described
nuance.
Tales of the Empire. You described every Inquisitor story up to this point.
God damn it. Okay, well, you know what? Then I don't know what to do, honestly. They should have just done, instead of because this is a mini series, instead of making this like an actual like mini arc that had gone through, each issue should have been a one shot that followed.
That would have also worked really well if we just nix the entire Tensu Run plot.
Yep.
And it is a decent pitch to say it's a bunch of Inquisitors going after the same guy. But yeah, having each one would also show how effective each Inquisitor is.
Yeah,
because the Fifth Brother's not particularly effective in his issue. Like the Dream Team Evil Women.
Yes.
That we see in issue 3, they are effective. They do their job correctly. We got to talk about this issue because we spent 15 minutes talking about Ryan Murphy, and then we spent 15 minutes talking about just the overall comic.
Well, we won't do the overall stuff at the end. Well, because we kind of did it already.
Okay, so we already sort of did it. I just want to run through some basic notes about this issue, starting with, oh my god, it's fucking Order 66 again. They open with Order 66 once more.
Yeah, why?
Because Order 66 traumatized an entire generation of children, and those children and teenagers are now writing Star Wars. And because it traumatized Dave Filoni specifically, who showed up as Plo Koon to the premiere of Revenge of the Sith and then had to watch him violently explode on screen, Order 66 is now everyone's problem.
Yeah, I also didn't like... First of all, okay, I get why they showed it, because it's supposed to be Vader talking, monologuing, whatever, right? But I also kind of like, what a waste of, 2 panels that you couldn't, or 3. I think it's like 3 pages. Like, what a waste that we couldn't have more.
It is 1, 2, almost 3. There is 1 frame of Vader at the end.
Okay, but my point is, like, what a waste of that's plot. Like, that's like a lot of like stuff we could have thrown in here to make this issue more interesting. I don't understand. Do we even need this monologue? We understand that like Vader's
he's also repeating the same stuff that he's been saying the entire time.
Right.
And like, yes, Tensu Run does have to watch all of the other Jedi die, but we don't really like get how he survives Order 66 or anything he has to do, because we have to smash cut to Vader on the Devastator.
Also, you literally, that smash cut could have been the beginning. Like, literally, if you cut out that whole first part and you just do that part.
You have 2 more pages you could devote to the rock scene later, which is a really good scene. We're going to talk about it 2 notes from now.
I don't know. It's such a strange choice. Also, I don't like how we go from issue 3 to issue 4 when we really don't understand what happens at the end. Like, he slashes the 7th sister or whatever, and then she's kind of like grasping her side. We don't know what happened to 9th sister, but we presumably they lose. They lose, and he's like, "We're gonna meet your master," but then he's just sort of sitting around waiting for Vader to show up. Like, he lets them go, and then Vader turns up in the Devastator. Yeah, I don't know. I don't like that.
Even then, Vader's like...
It's kind of weird. It's a weird choice.
Even then, yeah. We cut to the Devastator, and Vader is giving this monologue. I like how dramatic Vader is in this. He has some weird dialogue lines. like there's one page where he goes, "For the last time I speak these words, the Jedi known as Tensu Run must die." And I'm like, that's kind of an awkward series of lines.
Also, hasn't he said that like 9 times now? Like
He's
it's
also
like,
said this like 9 times.
yeah, it's the choices for Vader in this are so weird. Like, no, at this point, Vader is not going to go, you know what? You get one more chance. Like, you had
No,
4 chances.
Vader
Like, you know what I mean?
Vader for me feels so hard like he's trying to be the Emperor
Yeah,
in these sequences where he's talking to the Inquisitors throughout the comic. Sometimes it works for him and other times it doesn't. He does get appropriately he gets like appropriate drama Vader later on in the issue, but this scene was just kind of weird to me.
well, it's also kind of like, why doesn't he just go with them anyway? Like, it's kind of like cut out the middleman of like,
I
I
think
don't
he's
know.
trying to soften. I think he's trying to soften Tensu Run up, and then he's going to show up
Yeah,
and kill Steal the bitch, which is a very Vader thing to do. I will give them
true.
that. This is a very Vader thing to do, to send in your underlings and then show up and solve the problem yourself
Right.
when they have already done most of the legwork. Anyway, cut to Tensu Run. He is sitting on a rock, talking about how it really sucks that war has become commonplace. This is a really interesting scene. I like this one a lot because we saw how confident he was in the last issue when he was like, I know what I'm doing and I'm bringing Vader to me. And this issue, he kind of breaks down a little bit. And even though he just spent 3 issues from issue 1 to now being like, no, I'm going to be certain in my path and I'm going to be secure in my path and I'm going to push forward. And here he's like, no, I'm also just fucking tired.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just exhausted. Like, that's the problem is I can't keep making these sacrifices. I'm just tired. And I know that the future is just going to be more fighting. This is never going to end. I do like that scene a lot. Anyway, then there's a dogfight. R.I.P. to Pan. He gets fucking exploded in the same way Pelor did.
I have a problem with the way he got exploded too, because I don't think it's clear that
It
he's the one who gets exploded. Like,
it has to do with the panel layout, I think, because when you have a panel layout with a big panel like that,
yeah,
and because it's meant to be read in linear order, but when you have like a huge full page, I don't think it's a full page spread, but you have like a full page image like that, that's just the one page. I think it's meant to convey that the smaller boxes are happening at the same time. But if you look in the panel before that, or to like the page before that, you can see the Grand Inquisitor's ship sneaking up on Pan.
that's true. I guess it's
But
confusing.
it is weirdly laid out. It continues this comic's grand tradition of being super weirdly laid out.
Yeah, I don't like the flow of it. It's like it's so if you start the dogfight, they're shooting at the Grand Inquisitor, they hit his ship, then they're shooting at Tensu, and then they hit his ship, and then what's his name again?
Pan?
Pan hits one of the Inquisitors. It looks like he explodes part of their ship, right? Or like one of their wings, right? And then it says boom.
Well, he has this dialogue. Have you lost faith in me as well? And he does complete the dialogue.
Yeah.
He completes it. So like if they had done have you lost faith in me as and then cut off,
right.
You could have probably done this exact panel layout and it would have clearly communicated that Pan is being blown up.
Yeah. It's a little confusing.
The way that it's laid out, the only indication we have that Pan blew up is Tensu screaming.
Right. Yeah, because as far as you can tell, like, right, like anything could have exploded. He could have been like, no. I mean, like, I don't know. Why would he, you know,
the layout of the action beats in this, and particularly the dogfights, continue to be not super clear.
I don't like it.
I probably would not hand this comic to somebody as their first Star Wars comic.
There's a lot of, like, you have to imply a lot with a lot of the stuff that happens in these issues, which I don't love. I mean, I get that it's a mini series and I understand they only have so many panels, but like, think like there's my issue with this issue. What if the first 2 panels or whatever of the issue were not there and we just started on the Devastator? Maybe you had a few more of the dogfight. Maybe you had a few more of the actual fight that comes later. I feel like there's places where people need to pick and choose as artists to like cut stuff, but I also like, I don't know. I think there just needed to be one more read through of this. It just kind of, it's a little glaring on this issue.
Yeah, and Marvel artists are very famously underpaid and overworked.
Yeah.
So when I criticize some of the things in here, I want to be clear that I'm not making value statements about the artist or anyone that was involved with regards to the fact that they probably didn't have a lot of time to actually catch these things. But it is in the finished product, and we do need to talk about it because it is a negative experience for the reader if they're having to kind of flip back and forth to figure out what's going on in the comic. I think this is on Marvel. I think they either needed to give them more time or they needed more editing passes. The solution to everything can't be this needs to be longer.
Right. Right.
But I think a much more reasonable solution is we need more passes to try to figure out what the actual beats of the dogfight were.
Right.
But they retreat and they land, and the Inquisitors literally land, and Vader calls the Grand Inquisitor. So Vader knows about this dogfight. Like, it's in space. The Devastator is right there.
Right.
Like, presumably the Devastator is right there. And so he calls and he's like, is your mission complete? And the Inquisitor's like, motherfucker, we just got here. And Vader's like, yeah, you failed. I'm going to come deal with this myself.
This is why I was like, why didn't he just come with them? Because if he was going to just do this anyway, it is kind of like, yeah.
This is one of those shitty Vader moments that did ring true to me.
Yeah.
When he's just being a little asshole to all his subordinates. This is a very Anakin Skywalker move to be like, I gave you 10 minutes. Did you not solve this immediately? Okay, I'm coming to do it myself. It's like, I just think it's funny how he gives them absolutely no time to finish. Like, they would have been able to finish the mission if TENSU RUN had literally been standing there on the ground waiting for them, and they had a tiny little, like, lightsaber fight, and then they killed him. That's the only way they would have finished this in the arbitrary time frame Vader gave them, and did not let them know about. That's the other funny thing about this. Vader clearly didn't tell them they have a time limit.
Yeah, he wasn't like, by the way, you guys have 30 minutes to solve this issue.
Nope. So, like, the Inquisitors didn't meet the arbitrary 30-minute time limit that Vader did not tell them that they had. That is an appropriately shitty thing for Vader to do. Anyway, there's a big dumb fight with droids. TENSU RUN is like, I have accepted my fate, meaning I fucking know I'm gonna die at the end of this. Why does the other guy have a lightsaber? I think his name is Jed. Why does Jed also have a lightsaber?
Because he's also another random person who knows how to use a lightsaber, just like Pan. Like, we talked about this. I guess he's just also another one.
They all just randomly have lightsabers? Like, I don't know. I will say, with regards to the art of this comic, the panel of Vader showing up and he's silhouetted from the dark and lit from framed from below, genuinely fucking awesome panel. The appropriate Vader entrance should send chills down my back, and this panel did.
Yeah, he's finally like a formidable, scary person.
Yeah, he's done standing around monologuing at the Inquisitors. He has finally decided to show up and be Darth Vader. And I do not think, let me check. Yeah, Vader doesn't cross blades with TENSU once.
Which is odd. It's like, why does he have a saber out?
Not a single time. So that he can fucking decapitate him. Yeah, if you watch the sequence of events, Vader shows up, but it is actually, the Grand Inquisitor is dueling TENSU, and then Vader just kind of tosses TENSU out of the room and then slices his lightsaber in half. Like, Vader is so massively overpowered, he does not even need to bother to have a cursory duel with this guy.
Which makes sense, because it's like,
It does make sense.
I mean,
and I do kind of like that they gave the final, like, lightsaber duels and things to the Inquisitors and not Vader. Because this guy, TENSU RUN, was never going to even come close to having a chance of fighting Vader.
Right.
Like, unless your name is Obi-Wan Kenobi or Ahsoka Tano, there's not going to be much you're going to do against Vader. And Vader clearly just wants this guy dead. He's not, like, messing around with him. In Rebels, when he's fighting Kanan and Ezra on Lothal, he's just screwing with him.
Yeah.
The only reason that the entire Ghost Crew is not dead is because Vader wanted them to escape. But here it's like, no, this guy just needs to die. So Vader cuts his head off and then is like, bring me the head. You can leave the body to rot. Which, hey, Vader, do you have, like, a collection of heads? Like, what's going on here?
I don't understand the point of bringing him the head, because it's like, what are
you doing with the heads?
Yeah, what are you doing with the head?
What are you doing with them?
You put him in a jar somewhere? Like, I don't understand. Like, yeah, I didn't understand that line of questioning. If he doesn't give a shit about the body, then why does he want the head? Like, I don't know.
That also I had questions about.
I think it's just something cool to say, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
I don't really think it means much other than it's cool.
Yeah, and I
Yeah, so
mean,
that's it.
what really gets me, this is my final thought on this issue, and in fact, my final thought on the entire comic is I think where some of my disappointment is coming in is that it's called Star Wars Inquisitors, and the Inquisitors never win.
Yeah.
Not once.
I kind of
We don't spend 3 issues with them consistently failing to kill this guy, and then they succeed. They only succeed in killing Pan and Jed.
right.
Vader has to turn up and kill Steel Tensu. And even then, like, he's still going toe to toe with the Grand Inquisitor at the end, and Vader's just like, I'm done with this comic now. Yeet through the door, head slice off. We're done. And I'm like, the whole point of this was supposed to be about the Inquisitors, so it's not saying very much new about who they are, and it's not letting us see like how capable they are. So, not a big fan of where this ultimately went. I'm glad we did it. It's been a very interesting journey through these comics, but there were certainly parts of them that I liked, and I think the core idea is very good. On the surface, I don't like the execution at all.
Yeah, I'm with you. I really wish that I honestly I don't think Vader should have shown up at all. I think it should have just been the Inquisitors like, okay, we couldn't take them on individually, but together let's do it kind of thing. And then
Yeah.
they do it together and then they're somehow redeemed in Vader's eyes. I don't know. Like
Yes.
that's how it should have been. Like I don't love this. I don't like it at all. Makes me really sad that they just kind of sit around, especially honestly fucking Ninth Sister just chilling half this comic. She doesn't really do much. She just fights him for like a second, and then she's just kind of like standing around waiting for Vader to finish. And it's like,
Yeah.
I'm like, you know,
Yeah, it really should have been the most they do is they kill Pan and they kill Jed. So the Grand Inquisitor kills Pan, Fifth Brother kills Jed. And then they have that little sequence where they're fighting the droids, but it's only like 1 page. And
well,
so
and honestly, even that is unnecessary. Why are the droids fighting them for no reason?
yeah, the droids kind of come out of nowhere.
That doesn't even make sense. I mean, and like they never showed us them programming the droids or like setting them up or being like, oh, they're gonna protect us while we or distract them while we do our other things, like whatever. I didn't like that or care for that. Now, could I have seen a world where like maybe Jed and Pan fight their own individual Inquisitor at the same time, kind of thing, and then Tensu is fighting
thought they were setting it up for.
That would have made more sense. Okay. Anyway, sorry to complain too much about this issue, people, but we're
yeah,
just
I don't want to seem like, oh, this is
ungrateful.
completely irredeemable, yada, yada, yada. Like, there's parts in it that are good.
Yes.
It's just the overall story is not. And I think there is value if you are not doing it, in a Disney Star Wars is dead, Kathleen Kennedy is the worst. But there is value in criticism. There is value in analysis of why something doesn't work for you. So do understand that we're not making value judgments about the people involved. We don't want to come into this and say this is awful, and if you like it, you're bad, and also Disney Star Wars can't write a comic. But it is worth analyzing why reading this comic, especially as people who don't normally read comics, it didn't really work. And I think that, nothing is above criticism, not even Star Wars. And even as trying to come into something, and this will be my actual final thought, because I think if I'm going to end on a thesis statement, it's this one. I didn't like this comic very much, but I still think you can have a conversation that is positive about media and about the state of media, about something you didn't like and why you didn't like it. I think that's something that this comic has been an exercise in trying to do. And I am glad that we covered it. I am glad that we looked at, because I'm also used to reading the High Republic comics, and those are really well done. I have read all the Star Wars comics, but I'm not a voracious comic reader. But if you take nothing away from this, I would encourage people, just because you didn't like something doesn't mean it can't have value. And also, just because you want to have a conversation about something doesn't mean you have to always like it. You can have a conversation about why something doesn't work for you without being toxic. That is my thesis statement here. You can be
No,
critical
that's good, yeah.
without being awful.
Which is really a thesis statement of Star Wars in general. Like, I don't think people understand this, or like a lot of the mouth breathers don't really understand this, but like, I think that, guys, we talk about Star Wars all the time. We talk about what we like about Star Wars. We talk about what we don't like about Star Wars. We still like Star Wars. Like, if you hate it that much, then don't fucking talk about it. Like, I did not like this comic. I fucking love the Inquisitors. I love every character that's an Inquisitor. I love just the idea of the Inquisitors. I liked parts of this miniseries. Was it that great of a miniseries? I don't think it was like 100%, like knocking at it out of the park. There's parts that I would change, and we've talked about that already, so I won't go into that. But I think it's okay to not like everything. Like, you can not like parts of a overall world. Like, it's okay. Like, you're allowed to still like Star Wars without being like 100% in it. Like, if I was super toxic, I would be like, I'm never gonna look at Star Wars again because this one tiny little mini series wasn't that great. Okay, I still fucking love Inquisitors. I still like seeing them. Like, if they're still even considering bringing them back in even this form, for me, that's a win. I fucking love Inquisitors. So more Inquisitor comics, more, even if they're short like this, or whatever. Who cares? Like, I love it.
Yeah, and there's definitely important conversations to have with other people and like mindsets that we need to try to keep with regards to looking at a franchise overall and sort of finding the bits of it that resonate with you and that you like, even finding those bits in something that you necessarily didn't like as much. And I've said before on this show that part of the reason I enjoy doing the TV coverage so much is because we've had seasons and episodes of shows that I didn't like. And then when we covered them and we dug into them, I found things that I like in that show or in that book or in that movie that changed how I approach that. I watch Ahsoka differently now than I did the first time I watched it, because looking at it and challenging myself to take it on its own terms. I'm shamelessly stealing from Star Wars English Class's new season, which is really good. You should listen to it, about approaching media on its own terms and looking at it just internally, what it is and what it's trying to do. And you can definitely, if you come into a piece of media with a mindset that you are specifically going to look for things that you don't like and allow those to color your impression of the entire season of the show, then yeah, you're going to come away from the show with a negative opinion of it. And if you come into it on its own and engage with the media as it exists, yes, there will be things you liked. Yes, there will be things you didn't. Both of these things exist, and your job as a consumer is to reconcile with that in a healthy way. And speaking of shows that people definitely brought their toxic mindset into and just had a vicious fucking conversation about, so that we could not talk about the things that the show did right and the things that the show could have improved on, or where it got screwed a bit in the formatting or any of that. Speaking of pieces of media that no one on God's fucking earth seemed capable of having a goddamn conversation about that wasn't in fucking sane. Bradley, what are we going to cover next on the show?
Thankfully, I think everybody will be looking forward to the fact that we're going to have a very civil, a very positive discussion about the Acolytes.
We're going to talk about the Acolyte.
We are going to go ham. We're going to talk about everything. We're going to talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, what other people didn't like.
I have some opinions about that.
And we're going to talk about it every single week, and you guys are going to love it because, honestly, I'm so looking forward to talking about the Acolyte. It was one of my most anticipated shows that Star Wars has ever done, and I'm very excited to talk about it.
Yes, and I would challenge people as we go forward into the Acolyte to keep an open mind, and I'm going to, set that challenge to myself too. We're going to keep an open mind. We're going to do as we always do with every TV show, because Bradley and I have gotten really good at this by now, is we're going to talk about what works, and we're going to analyze what doesn't, and see if we can figure out why it doesn't work. Because there are parts of the Acolyte that just didn't work for me. But that'll be next week. We're going to get back into TV shows, and then Bradley and I were mapping out our schedule for the beginning of next year. We're going to do the Acolyte. going to do one or two things in the middle, and then right now the plan is to jump into Skeleton Crew after it ends. Right after it ends this time. So we're almost caught up, Bradley. After Skeleton Crew, we will be caught up.
I know. We have a whole month and a half until Celebration.
A whole month after that. Yeah. Well, no, because we're gonna end Skeleton Crew at the end of March, and then the whole month of April will be Celebration. Because Bradley and I are both going.
Yeah. So
that's gonna
should be interesting to see what we can get into after that. Because who knows what's gonna happen after Celebration?
Who knows? Probably Andor season 2.
That's very true.
We're going to probably talk about Andor Season 2. But I know that we've also got some fun stuff that's coming up. Next year, we're looking at doing a lot more episodes about things that are not necessarily the TV shows. That we're really looking with our schedule about what can we pepper in there between the TV shows. So we have some solid ideas, similar to the book and comic talks that we just did, or the book and comic talks that we did during the strike, and also maybe looking at the movies again. Sure. So we shall see. We'll see. Next year's going to be an exciting year on Gold Squadron Gays. What is it going to be, 4th year doing this? We're coming up on 3.
Oh yeah, I guess whatever the year is would be our.
We started in 2021. Before, right? This was our 3rd year of doing it.
Oh, okay.
We started in 2021, right?
Honestly, what's time?
It's our 3rd or 4th year of doing the show. Also, we have some stuff that we're cooking in the back end. Pluggables, because this was not supposed to be an hour-long episode. And unfortunately, we didn't tangent that much, except in the beginning. Pluggables. Bradley does a bunch of reality TV. You can find it on Bravo and Peacock and wherever the shows currently are. Just Google it. It's pretty easy. Shows such as Temptation Island, Married to Medicine Season 10, and the most recent one, The Circle Season 7 on Netflix. I am on the Star Wars TTRPG podcast For Light and Dice with our friends Chris from Darkside Divas and Holodeck Divas, Hope from J Guys and Jedi, Jess from RuPaul's Pod Race, Colton from Nerdsmith, and our friend Robin. You can also find gay books that I write on Kindle Unlimited called Beach House Studios. They're thriller mystery novels. There's a new one coming soon. Okay, that's it for Pluggables. So this was not supposed to be a fucking hour. So Bradley, please run the social so I can get to my Saturday. Thank you for listening to this episode of Gold Squadron Gays. Did Charles fuck something up? Email us at goldsquadrongays@gmail.com to let us know. You can also find us on Twitter at @GoldSquadGays, and you can find us on TikTok and Instagram at @GoldSquadronGays. You can also find us on YouTube at our Gold Squadron Gays YouTube channel, where we post full episodes of this show. Finally, if you liked the show, don't forget to rate us and give us a review on your favorite podcast platform. That allows other people to find our show. As always, thank you for listening to Gold Squadron Gays, and we'll see you next week.